Hi there again. Thank you for visiting my channel. Please do not forget to press the subscribe button, give a thumbs up for like, share, and leave a comment, hopefully a good comment. Now, I always begin my videos with basically the same thing. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes. It's very important for me to begin each one, and even though this is a continuation or part two of part one of Benjamin Netanyahu, the man who would be king, emperor, I will reiterate the same thing for the first 5 to 10 minutes, and do forgive me. My videos are long. They have a lot of information, but of course, you can always skip, fast forward to where I begin with the meat of the video. And of course, they're long. Don't expect you to sit for 2 hours. Maybe some people might. Hopefully, they're engrossing enough to get your attention, to enthrall you. But you can listen to them over days or weeks, a little bit at a time. It's a lot of information to absorb. So, beginning now, my name is Winifred Davis, and I read a lot. I like to read, and I'll get carried away and talk and then get back, and sometimes I miss my part, so do forgive me. Now, my name is Winifred Davis, and I have been a shaman, psychic medium, a spiritual and traditional healer and counselor for the past 37 years. I'm also an author, a poet, essayist, and a spoken word movement performer. I should say former. I don't really do that anymore. I subscribe to no religion. Absolutely none. It might seem as if I do, but I don't. I just believe that if you follow the divine principles of the fatherhood of God, recognizing there's something that is greater than us, the brotherhood of man, that we're all brothers in this brotherhood of man, doing unto others as you would have others or them do unto you, love. That which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. One divine universal love. That's all you have to believe and practice. And then that's it. So you can subscribe to any religion you want once you recognize and adhere to those principles and don't believe in usurping the free will of others, or that your religion is better than those of others. You must respect other people's beliefs once those beliefs adhere to those divine principles. Do no harm. Now, I believe in universal justice and truth, the imposter justice of man. With it, there's an exception to every rule. But with universal justice, there are no exceptions to its rules. In other words, no man is above the law. I know that Americans like to say, or especially the politicians, no man is above the law in America, but that is not true. We know that. In practice, all you have to do is look in the people's house, and the whore of Babylon, the man with the cloaca mouth, the golden calf. These are images and descriptions that my guides give me. They have a comical sense, but a very serious sense of humor. The man, the golden calf, but the gold is not real, it's fake. It sure is above the law, man's laws, and of course, empowered by its very corrupt Supreme Court. Those who are supposed to ensure the health and the strength of the Republic safeguard, the guardrails. Third branch of government, but they themselves need others to oversee them because they're too corrupt. Many of them, most of them, are not up to the task which they were given. The very important task of saving the republic that is America's democracy. Moving on. The truth has no my side. It has no your side. It stands. The truth stands unopposed. Please remember that I'm not here to lead anyone. I don't want to lead anyone. And I don't want anyone to lead me. My duty is only to my conscience. I've learned that. Eons ago, long ago. And that conscience is the light that guides my free will. Each of us was given a free will at creation with a conscience, the light to guide that free will. And that conscience is what links us back to our beginnings, to our Creator. That's something that is greater than us. That conscience is what makes us responsible for our own actions. So the buck stops with us. So we can't say my general made me do it, my president, my king, my parents, my brother, or the bully. You can't say that. The buck stops with you. With universal justice, you are responsible for your own actions and you cannot abscond that. Once again, my duty is only to my conscience, and I learned that long time ago. And so therefore, sometimes when we know that and we do that, people look on us and say that we are rebellious. But our duty is always to our conscience. Now, I am just a vessel, a messenger, delivering messages from the collective, which includes my guides, my many guides, some of them who've been with me from the beginning, and members of the different hierarchies, including the angelic realm. And when I say the angelic realm, I'm not being presumptuous here, I'm just stating it as it is. Now, I decided long ago to do this. This was my soul contract for this last part, this final part of my Neptunian journey in this lifetime. Now, these messages, sometimes they're brutal because the truth is brutal. The truth is honest, and only when we face the truth and by looking in our mirror of self-reflection can we face that truth, and the image that we see, that reflection, is not pretty sometimes, I know. But face that reflection we must if we are going to advance up that ladder of soul restoration and bring equilibrium to our soul, restore that equilibrium to our soul. Once again, I'm not here to lead anyone or to convert anyone. My duty is only to my conscience. Each man must evolve according to his own light. It's all about free will, not to force anyone to your belief. And please do not freely interpret what I say. Say exactly what I say. It's very important. Do not take what I say out of context. That is important. If I say blue, I mean all shades of blue. I didn't say royal blue, navy blue, baby blue, sky blue. I said blue. And if I say that there's a tiny fish in a small aquarium, please do not freely interpret that. Say exactly what I say, because by the time it's repeated to the 10th person, that tiny fish has become a giant whale, and a whale is not even a fish, it's a mammal. And that small aquarium has become a vast ocean, which is by no means a small aquarium. In other words, some get it, some sell it. In the words of my great grandmother, Aunt Ella, as I receive it, that's how I give it. And so do not freely interpret. Say exactly what I say. If you do not understand, feel free to email me. My email is noted at the bottom of this video, or ask me in the comments below. Now, as I said, sometimes those messages are brutal, what I have to say, but I have to say them as I get them, and without apology. Because, as my great-grandmother Ella would say, once again, me nah go hold me mouth a ground fi talk. Left me make me talk. I'm not going to face plant or mumble or hide and color things and say them in pretty words because I think I might offend. I will say what I have to say because I have to say what I have to say. That is, I am a messenger, a vessel. And that's what I chose to do. That's what I'm expected to do. I must honor my contract. Now, I started this channel to discuss the truth that is reincarnation and its facts. At times I will discuss at length current events as I see fit because they're very relevant to the truth that is reincarnation and its facts. This is a very special time that we're in. A cup runneth over. Once in a blue moon period of greater transitions that seem as if we are in Armageddon, the revelations, end times, the apocalypse, but we're not. We will move on. Things will get better. It will simmer down at some point. Continue until it repeats itself. And there's always apocalypse, Armageddon, end times going on a smaller scale throughout the world. This one now is a once in a blue moon, bigger one that is affecting the planet, the climate, everyone on this earth. No one can escape what is going on right now. And I like to say, until such time, always, please do not forget Gaza. The genocide and the ethnic cleansing, the atrocities, the daily atrocities being committed, the siege, the starvation, the privation, the hunger, lack of medicine, food, lack of the ability to live, housing, like shelter, all of that still going on. Never mind the fake ceasefire. Still going on and will continue until the world steps in or the universe has other plans. But divine timing is at hand. But divine order, divine timing often depends on divine order. But sometimes divine timing, when things must need to occur, will eschew divine order. Don't forget the situation in Sudan, it's horrific. The genocide, the starvation, the famine, privation. Don't forget the Rohingyas and Lebanon now. That genocide has gone on to Lebanon and wants to get on in and the destruction in Iran, the Great Persia. Don't forget it. Don't forget those places. Always remember the children. I hate war with a passion, as you know, if you're used to watching my video, and especially because of what it does to our children. Not because, and whether they're the children of the perpetrators, such as Israel, perpetrating a lot of misery in this world, or they're the children of the victims of the perpetrators. They're all children, and they should never have to run from rockets and traumatized by sirens. They should never be starving, denied clothing, shelter, food, medicine, fuel, shelter, education, the right to play. None should, because of adults and their forever wars. Anyhow, this video is for entertainment purposes only, and I'm sorry for taking so long in my introduction. So sorry. But this video is for entertainment purposes only. Now, in this part 2 of this video, I am going to discuss the unintended consequences of the actions of the entity that is Benjamin Netanyahu, formerly the entity that was Gyula Gombos, former Hungarian Prime Minister 1932 to 1936, and the State of Israel, the unintended consequences of their actions. But before getting into that, I'm going to repeat some of the messages, because I find that I've gotten messages and visions that I've gotten that I feel very relevant in the unintended consequences that I'm about to discuss. Now, if you will recall, and I have those in my other videos and some of them in my books listed below, on September 28th, which was a Sunday actually, I memorialized this. So I wrote, on Friday night, September 26, 2025, I traveled to Israel and found myself among throngs of people. As I walked through, I heard planning, but what exactly I could not hear clearly. Immediately as I started to walk away, Netanyahu approached me, wanting to know what I had heard. I did not respond and traveled back immediately from my astral travels or my travels. Eavesdropping, I do that sometimes, thousands of miles away, when my guides tell me time to eavesdrop. But then it was given what I could not hear later. It was given to me because I was in a hurry. So it was given the next night. And as I said, I am an astral traveler. I can sometimes overhear conversations, and I detail that in one of my previous videos, thousands of miles away, or I can travel to future events, as I did in Baghdad months, many months before the invasion, the 2003 invasion by America. My foot burnt as I walked, as I was in Baghdad that night. Everything was destroyed. I just saw, it's like in one of those movies of apocalyptic proportions where everything has been burnt to the ground and all you see are just the black ashes and smoke rising and the twisted and acrid metal. That's how it looked. And as I walked, I saw the smoke and the heat, right? And I could feel I was bare feet. My feet started to burn me. And believe me, when I came back from that travel for 1 week, I could hardly walk on one of my feet. I couldn't put any shoe on, and I could barely put it on the ground because it burnt for a long time, for 1 week. Now, on Saturday, February 27th, at 11:20 p.m. Let me see here. No, the date is wrong. That would be September 27th. September 2025 at 11:20 p.m. The following message came through. Planning afoot, mischief, PR, that's public relations, not working, world turning away. Israel will launch some false flag operations in multiple cities, including at least one Muslim or Arab state, North America and Europe, possibly somewhere in East Asia or the islands. Blame it on Iran and claim Hezbollah was in collusion. This is to galvanize the world to attack the Great Persia. America will be in the know, as well as its wingman, England. Wingman and sycophant. Now remember, Britain is the mother of America and Israel. And then it said, for all who have eyes and ears, the question to ask is, why would the Great Persia give unto its foe a ladder to climb out of the pit it has dug for itself? And you can gather what that means. Israel has already exposed itself for what it truly is. A supremacist state, a racist state, a cruel, morally bankrupt state. So that's what they're saying. It has already dug its own pit. So why would Iran, as we would say, help it by doing these, their false flag things in the world to take the attention from the atrocities Israel has done and has been committing for so long and has been found out. It's naked now. Emperor has lost his clothes. And my guides, some of them lived in the Great Persia. They refer to Iran. Iran is the endonym. What Iranians refer to themselves as, it's referred to it as Iran. Persia is Greek, but the world knows it, the Great Persia, that civilization that's over 4,000 or 5,000 years old. So they use it to show the West and to remind them that when we talk about bombing them back to the Stone Age, who are you? You live in a country that is only 250 years old. The Great Persia has given much to humanity, to the world, including the American postal system. So we must remember in those great gardens, etc., etc. So that's why they use the Great Persia, to send a message. And to those who talk about Western civilization and the rest of the world, including the Great Persia, they're less than, they're savages. It's to tell them, including the Zionists in Israel, before you existed, there was and still is the Great Persia. We don't have to agree with what the government does right now in the Islamic Republic, and they must do better with regards to human rights. So must America, so must most of the countries in the world. But that civilization, the Great Persia, remember that. Mr. Netanyahu, remember that when you talk about Judeo-Christian Western civilization, you know nothing about any of that. Now, the CIA and Mossad were really involved in burning the mosques in Iran, and some of the horrible violence of the recent protests, beheadings and shootings. And my guides had said, do not let anyone gaslight you. The protests in January. Look at Gaza. My guides tell me that. The crackdown by the government was also brutal. Make no mistake. But then it was fomented by the spies on the ground, the CIA and Mossad and their agents, the people. And then it was verified about 2 weeks ago by the man with the cloaca mouth. That's why you should never let him know your secrets. That's why his mouth is a cloaca mouth, and that's what my guides have labeled him as. He admitted it. He admitted that they gave a lot of weapons to the protesters. He said gave them to the Kurds, and he guessed the Kurds kept some, but they were passed in there. So Iran was quite right when it said that a lot of those violence, burning of mosques, beheadings, and killing of police officers and security officials and civilians was the CIA and Mossad. They're cruel, very cruel. Now, let us recall the message also that I was given on September 20th, 2024 at 4:38 a.m. And remember, this is for entertainment purposes only. Quote, Netanyahu will have a sudden stop. Something is going to come out of left center. What will halt him? And please note that the message did not say that will halt him, but what will halt him. For entertainment purposes only. We leave it there. We leave it at that. The record speaks for itself. On August 23rd, 2025, I was shown the million plan that Israel has. And their aim is to incapacitate at least 1 million Palestinians. So that's half of the Palestinian populations. And I go through how they've the calculations that they have. Like for every death, there would be maybe 3 who are wounded, who might suffer lifelong disabilities and other calculations. And that's recorded in my books and also in the prior videos, 20 to 23, I believe, and also videos 15 to 19. Now, another vision, one state solution, and that's memorialized in my books, 2024, 2025. On Saturday, once again, February 27th, 2026, at 4 a.m. And they elaborated on it during the rest of the day. There will be, quote, there will be no two-state solution. There will be a one-state solution. And although there might be a preliminary one, the one that will last will not be the one that Israel imagines. For indeed, Israel will be absorbed into one state. For behold, there shall arise an energy of Saladin. And the question is not if Israel will be absorbed into a one state, but one of when. How it will be absorbed will depend on its actions now and from this moment forward. So from the moment of February 28th, 27th rather, at 4 a.m., from that moment forward, their actions will determine how it will be absorbed. Let me go back to the quote. In the final analysis, we must all surrender to the clock of the universe, Father Time, divine timing. It is better to be like the peach rose that lost not one petal in a Category 5 hurricane, or the coconut tree, than to fall like the big deciduous trees, like the breadfruit. We must be flexible in life. I cannot say when. Perhaps it will not be in my lifetime. And that's the lifetime of the entity that is speaking. No, that's me, my higher self. But it will come. Israel will be a one state, part of a one state. That is written. What is yet not written is how. It is up to Israel and its population to decide that part of its destiny. Let the record speak for itself, and I say, with the greatest of humility, I am just a messenger, as I was more than 2,800 years ago in the Levant. On March 4th, 12:12 a.m., quote, there might be an exodus, a real exodus, not like the small one of long ago. This will be the real one. It is not set in stone. Only the people of Israel and their actions can determine this. Remember the vision of July 2024 as well. I should say 2025. And Turkey being on the roster of Israel. Remember, we heard it from Naftali Bennett and Lapid that Turkey is next and deserves to be next. They've now said it out aloud, and remember, I got it almost a year ago, that message, and that Erdogan, and it's in the videos and in my books published last year. He's slated for assassination. He has to be careful, and Turkey is slated for destabilization, and the activities in Cyprus, and that's been going on for a while now, is part of the plan. I detail those in my book. Remember, once again, that I eavesdrop and travel, or some say astral travel. Now, let's get to the unintended consequences. Remember, this video is for entertainment purposes only. Take it with a grain of salt, and I say that grudgingly. The spiritual realm, that's the eternal realm, not the temporary one. It's eternal. Through the spiritual lens, what often seems to be unintended consequences through the temporal lens are actually intentional. In this instance, the entity that is Benjamin Netanyahu has not only chosen the imprint of Jew to advance his quest for power, but also a bonus, one might say, of changing the representation of the persecuted and victim underdog imprint of Jew. Another unintended consequence of the entity's actions in Gaza is that it has now offered the younger generation a genocide for the ages that they have witnessed firsthand in the glaring sun of broad daylight, and not so far in memory, like the one in Nazi Germany, or the Rwandan genocide, even the Rwandan genocide, and the Nama Herero genocides, and so many listed in my book, A Broken Record History on Rewind, published in February 2024, listed below. So many. But the young people, this is the one for the ages that they've witnessed firsthand. They will forget many of them, and won't even know about the one in World War II committed by the Nazis. The old will die. They have that memory. And the young cannot and will not forget what they see with their own eyes. This is the genocide they will remember, for once again they saw it with their own eyes, live stream in living color. Furthermore, the depravity has been to such a degree that rather than desensitizing us in what Israel was betting on in their psyops, it has sensitized even the desensitized. Israel could always count on the passage of time in what seems to be a world with a short attention span and with so much gaslighting, and especially a short attention span, especially in America. And that's who they care about, because that's where they get their money and their arms and the support to build their empire and do their genocide. With so much gaslighting and dirt and mud being thrown around by an overwhelming, dizzying array of incorrect deeds to make us forget and move on from Gaza. This has not happened in this instance. This is supremacist ideology and practices, and its arrogance overplaying its hand. There's a time when all things must come to an end. The passage of time has served to galvanize most of us who have not fled the light of our conscience. History teaches us that every rope has an end, and there comes a time when Miss Thomas Puss must fall from its high seat of hubris. High seat, they say in Jamaica, kill Miss Thomas Puss. It might not appear so at the moment, but the chickens are coming home and have come home to roost. The memory of the Holocaust of World War II will unfortunately be dimmed, satisfying Holocaust deniers, many of them close friends and supporters of the entity that is Benjamin Netanyahu and his agenda. Through the eyes of the soul, that is indeed the hope of the miscreant souls, that the world will indeed forget, or that the Holocaust of World War II, that has garnered so much empathy for the imprint Jew, will recede into the far recesses of the mind. A welcome vengeance with the hope that the imprint Jew will be as equally reviled as the imprint Nazi. That's something to think about. This is the miscreants taking revenge. No Holocaust and no genocide should be forgotten. We need to know and remember each one of them so that we do not repeat them. But we do. History and rewind. Broken record. As discussed in detail in Davis, in one of my books, 2025, and I should say that's in 2024 with the Broken Record, History on Rewind, and also in Thoughts on the Past listed below. After World War II with the Germany, von Trotta perpetrated Namaquah Herero genocide, having the dubious honor of being the first of the century, the 20th century. After another Germany perpetrated genocide under the Nazis now of 6 million Jews and up to 75 to 80% of Europe's Roma Sinti population, a collective of the world said never again. But then, it has been yet again, many times, as I said, over the rest of the 20th century, in different places like the Balkans and Rwanda, and still yet again, and ongoing in this, the 21st century, in places like the Sudan, and of course, that longest, slow-rolling genocide that has been going on in the occupied territories of Palestine. from especially in the 1930s, before the extermination camps of Nazi Germany. The ongoing genocide has been going on for decades, carefully managed and calculated, but it is now on steroids. Time is running out. They're smelling the coffee. Haven't gotten the memo fully, but they're smelling the coffee. It involves starvation, dehydration, hyperthermia, disease, 24/7 bombing, shootings, perpetual displacement, sadistic hunger games, and everything in between. Even the dead know no rest, no solace. And of course, all the hospitals, medics, aid workers have been killed, been made unalived, slaughtered, along with the truth tellers, the real journalists that exist today, the witnesses to history. In America, for example, even the BBC in England, journalism is really dead. There are very few real journalists now. They've all been bought out by the billionaires, and we know what their agenda is. The sunlight, broad daylight, used to shock us, is now laying bare the depravity and moral bankruptcy of Israel. Their live human experiments with the Palestinian people as lab rats now also put them in that infamous crowd of the Japanese Unit 731, discussed at length in Thoughts on the Past, my book published in 2025. The Nazis puts them in league with the Unit 731 of the Japanese during World War II in China, the Nazis and von Trotha in Namibia. Even the number of calories has been calculated to keep the people in Gaza just on the brink of famine. This is not a conspiracy theory. These are facts, documented, so that the sensibilities of what Israel sees as the weak, woke world would not be offended by the sight of starving children. What a morally bankrupt society, filled with the supreme of supremacists. My God. According to Benjamin Netanyahu, quote, minimal assistance, end of quote, to prevent, quotation, images, end of quotations, of any starvation and famine from circulating, because it would endanger America's continued military support. And I have, this is in Beltran Newton, and I have all these references in my book. In January 2025, the Biden administration's ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, despite evidence to the contrary, defended Israel, lauding Israel for preventing Gaza from crossing over. And this is a quote: preventing Gaza, that's what he said, from crossing over into malnutrition and famine. In 2000, end of quote. In 2006, a senior advisor to then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said, quote, the idea is to put the Palestinians on a diet, but not to make them die of hunger, end of quote. This starvation policy has now been put on steroids, where they do not even care about the images. In the study entitled Food Consumption in the Gaza Strip, the Red Lines, Israel estimated the required daily caloric intake in the territory at 2,279 calories per person. Quote, in order to maintain the basic fabric of life, end of quote. In the area, Israel would allow in 106 trucks. We know that it means a lot more in Gaza. Remember now, Gaza has depended on UNRWA and aid since the Nakba, right? First year it was also at the request of the UN, where the Quakers, that other face, that face of the light of America from the beginning, were the ones who provided shelter, food, schools, medicine, you name it, sanitation, facilities to Palestinians when they were evicted from their homes and their lands and their businesses in 1948, before UNRWA was created in 1949. Now, the starvation, let me get back here. Sorry, see, I lost my train of thought again. Now, Israel would allow in 106 trucks with food and other essential goods every day. The Supreme Court in Israel, that is, forced the release of this document at the behest of the Israeli human rights organization, Gisha. And it's, they're few, but they are the only hope for Israel, because most of the population is morally bankrupt, according to the polls. The United States knew of this plan, and the plan was to keep the Gaza economy on the brink of collapse, according to the diplomatic cables published by WikiLeaks, and even dates in this go-round, because of its high caloric content, was rejected as part of food aid that could enter Gaza, especially during Ramadan. And think America knew this, but remember now, when Hamas won the elections, and whether there was hanky-panky going on or whatever, but they were democratically elected, and the West, the collective West, decided they were going to lay Israel, they supported Israel for laying what was, call it, a 2/3 siege by air, sea, and partially land to Gaza. So that has been going on for now more than 20 years. The collective West, these hypocrites, and they are the ones why I wrote one of the poems, or I should say was given one of the poems, called What Do You See in the Mirror? Talking about the pretenders to the throne of virtue, who view others on their low ground, on the low ground of their moral high ground. But they're not fit, because when they try to put that crown on of the king of virtue, they're only pretenders. Their heads are bowed because the weight of that crown of virtue is too heavy for their heads. And the cloak that is worn, that is required by the throne of virtue, is too broad, and so it falls off their narrow shoulders, heads bowed, and they stand naked, because they are not the rightful heirs, as they pretend to be, to the throne of virtue. When the wheat and the tares grow to the time of harvest, and you look in the mirror of self-reflection, what will you see in the mirror? exactly what image will the collective West see in the mirror? What do we see of their reflection in the mirror? Pretenders to the throne of virtue. And I continue, I'm sorry for digressing. You can check my books for those collective of 14 poems given to me in a space of days in December 2023, 2 months after October 7th. The starvation policy that Israel has been using as a weapon to create regime change after Hamas was democratically elected and fully now to enact ethnic cleansing, genocide, mass murder, and render Gaza, quote, sterile. That is in the word used by the miscreant, that is Benjamin Netanyahu, sterile. That is, once again, used by that entity as if Gaza and its people are disease, is not unlike the Herbert Backe Nazi hunger plan to forcibly starve around 31 to 45 million Soviets and Eastern Europeans by capturing food stocks and redirecting them to German forces. This too was inspired by America and its treatment of Native Americans. Now, I usually say you have a triumvirate: Israel, America, and Britain. Britain, the mother, now reduced to being a wingman and sycophant. How the mighty have fallen. Suez Canal crisis was the final nail in the coffin of that empire. And its children, America and Israel, both of them, of course, revolted and made certain that they were no longer under their wings. America and the Revolution, and Israel and the Sergeant's Affair and the bombing of the King David Hotel and all of that. So Britain just decided to give up and leave, but of course giving on to Israel more than half of Palestine to the Zionists, who were a lot less in population than Palestinians, whose lands were usurped, and even now they cannot have a homeland. They're occupied. Now, this too, as I said, was inspired by America and its treatment of Native Americans. You know, the Baki Plan America has done, as I discussed at length in my book and in different videos, has been the inspiration, the other face, that face of America, of the Puritans, that extremists, that breeding ground, fertile breeding ground of extremism and cult that is one half of America, one of the faces of Jim Crow, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, the Heritage Foundation, Ku Klux Klan, the United Daughters of the Conspiracy, the Pilgrims. That face has been the inspiration for much atrocities in this world. And that face also comes as the face of the light, which were the Quakers and many of the founding fathers and the Constitution, and of course, once again, inspired by the great Persia, Cyrus Bill of Rights, that has inspired the U.S. Bill of Rights and its Constitution. Cyrus, that face of darkness, has inspired much atrocities, and they all come from England. Both faces. Now, as I said, during the Great Southern Indian, we're going to see, you have the Israelis calculating the caloric intake required to, kind of keep Palestinians on the brink and not show the images of starving Palestinians. But of course, they've thrown that by the wayside in the past 2.5, 3 years, to offend the frailties of the woke people, the weak people, because common human decency to supremacist ideology and practices and the conservative extremist bent, common human decency is supposedly woke and weak. Now in India, going back to that, during the Great Southern Indian Famine, and that was 1876 to 1878, British Famine Commissioner Sir Richard Temple also calculated the minimum amount of food that an individual, so he was the grandfather of this caloric intake stuff, so you can starve people and keep them just on the brink. He calculated the minimum amount of food that an individual, so this is from the 1700s, think about that an individual required to stave off starvation. He even conducted human experiments in which strapping, and this is a quote from him, strapping fine fellows were starved until they, so big, what they would say in Jamaica, strapping. So, we can see where the English influence come from, so they say strapping. Right? In Jamaica, they say strapping. So strapping, that means you're big and you have body mass. Fine fellows were starved until they resembled little more than animated skeletons. This is what you're doing to Indians, your fellow human beings, brothers in this brotherhood of man. Utterly, and it goes on, but the quote finishes, utterly unfit for any work. All this was done during this period of famine to maximize British revenues. Remember the Irish potato famine? Don't disturb the market. Let the Irish people starve. Britain, the mother, with its children, America and Israel. And I'm sorry, I sound just absolutely aghast by this, but I'm only human, but I know how it goes through the eyes of the soul, and we're all brothers in this brotherhood of man. Forgiveness and love. And most of us have at some point in our different karmic journeys done despicable things. Once again, the genocide in Gaza has been an incremental, slow, decades-long genocide of culling, starvation, imprisoning men, thereby forcing their wives, Palestinian women, to have to rely on smuggled sperm from prison to keep their population going, maiming even the children to create an army of amputees, controlling even the right to water in agreements or accords that has now been put on steroids. It is now or never. The 1978 Camp David Accord laid the groundwork for the state of Israel to control Palestinian water resources. Other accords would follow with the same intention. Since the fall of the Assad regime, Israel has seized control of the Yarmouk Basin and another river, vital to life and livelihoods in Jordan and Syria. Think about that. the entity that is Benjamin Netanyahu, in trying to put out the lights, this is another unintended consequences of the Palestinians, has instead, because the Palestinians just refuse to die, they refuse to die, and that infuriates Israel. So, in trying to put out the lights of the Palestinian people, he has instead shown the light on the crimes that it has been committing against the people for almost a century. Nothing stays hidden forever. That is history. History predicts that, but we never learn. We keep thinking we can get away with it. We found the perfect formula to get away with murder, but we just never learn. That's man in his arrogance. So it was not a secret what they were doing to Palestinians. It was what I call an on-flagpole, open secret. But of course the smoke that the Western media and the governments, especially in America, both Democratic and Republicans, the smoke that they would billow and they would gaslight people, actually made it look as if it were a secret, so that you couldn't see what was going on, and all that salesmanship of the used car salesman, that especially during his tenure over the past 30 years of Benjamin Netanyahu, and his arrogance. And he was educated in America, and so he was one of the elites, one of them. So people don't pry. Most people are not interested in informing themselves. They're busy, I guess, looking with their day-to-day affairs, trying to survive. So they're not avid readers of history and good history. And so it was like a secret, but actually for a large majority of the world, it was an open on flagpole secret. It was an open secret. So now the world has seen it, because they're overplaying their hands, and nothing is hidden forever. Everything must one day come to light. But the world should not have been or be surprised by ethnic cleansing or genocide happening in the occupied territories for almost a century. The founders of Israel did not hide their aim. In their own words, previously mentioned, they came to drive out the Palestinians from their homes and land by any and every means, and they did not expect the Palestinians to love them. They said so themselves. Read the book. When they did so, they stated that they did not come to share or work side by side, and I'm not freely interpreting here. I'm saying almost verbatim, but read my book for the exact quotes. They did not come to share or work side by side with them, with the Palestinians, because Palestinians were beneath them. They would only tolerate about 20%, and you can think about Jerusalem and the makeup of its population to verify, of the Palestinians to remain in the Palestinian homeland to provide services such as waiters, carriers or hewers of wood and water, and carriers of water, and as slaves. That's in their words, slaves. The Christian Zionists in America have not yet gotten the message or the memo that they're also in the sights of the Zionist Israelis. Jewish Israelis, Zionists, Jewish Israelis, or let's say Zionist Israelis, non-Arabs. You will also be discarded. This is a message to those Zionist Christian zealots. When you have served your purpose, and I think we're seeing that now. The Zionist Israelis have not even finished crossing using the stick to get up the hill. They haven't got up the top of the hill yet, but they've already begun to discard the stick. They've thrown it away now because they feel they've reached the promised land. You will be discarded when you have served their purpose, even though you might believe you're using them. History teaches us that thief and thief, God laugh. When God sees two thieves in cahoots, he laughs because he knows they'll start on each other. It's cannibalistic. They do not want you Christians around either. Some of these Christians are aware, but they too have their nefarious aims in the second coming. There are some, like that man or ambassador named Huckabee. He's a rather ignorant and, dare I say, illiterate fellow, even though he can read and write, who believe in the outrageous and idiotic proposition of chosen people. Your politicians, I'm talking about the people in America, do not even care about the Christian site when they visit Israel. When was the last time they took a picture of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre being there? No. Yes, visit the site that is important to Jews. And remember now, Jerusalem is very important to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Okay, so visit the site that is important because you're in Israel, and most of the time these politicians, their trips are paid for. It is sort of like a brainwashing type of trip paid for by the state of Israel to brainwash them and tell them, remember now what you need to do, why we support you. You need to support all Israel first agenda. Because guess what? As Epstein said with his friends, Goyim, non-Jews, non-Zionists, all of us are there to serve the gods, those Zionist gods. I digress. Let's get back here. So when was the last time they took a picture at a Christian site in Jerusalem? Why are we shocked at what is happening? We must be honest about these facts, call them out, and then perhaps we will arrive at a solution. Put an end to this nonsense. In wanting all as strong as Israel pretends to be now, it might lose all if it continues on this trajectory. In Jamaica, the saying is, want all, lose all. This is not the 17th, 18th, 19th, or early 20th century. America and its corrupt politicians have always been there and are still there until they are not, as I stated back in 2024 in my videos and in my book. When the voices of the American voters become too loud, even with all the PR and compromise, many of those politicians will find new lovers. That's what politicians do. You know, they don't care about the old broom. You know, in Jamaica they say, old broom. You know, new broom sweeps clean, but old broom knows all the corners. An old broom knows because it's been doing this for so long, but a new broom, it's not tattered, so it sweeps clean, but it cannot get in the corners. Well, politicians, they are glad to ditch their old lovers for new ones, if the price is right. So many of those politicians will find new lovers, or they'll retire, and they should retire. And people like Chuck Schumer, who puts Israel first, needs to retire. And people like Cory Booker and Hakeem Jeffries, they need to reevaluate their values. Put America first and call out the genocide that is happening to those little brown children and babies in Gaza. That's what they need to do. Never mind supporting that genocide because you get AIPAC money. And some of them, I guess, maybe in their Christian belief, maybe do believe that they ought to target Muslims. But remember, suffering does not ennoble. And we might be a persecuted bunch, but we don't mind persecuting others. That's the way of imperfect man. Now, history teaches us that you can fool all the people sometimes, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. In wanting all and trying to kill that two-state solution, since its birth, with the killing of the UN negotiator Count Folk Bernadotte in 1948. See, it's always been killing it's not doing anything different. It always kills the negotiators, including recently in Iran. Israel might very well end up with a one-state solution, and I wrote this before the message also, and the message clarified and elaborated even more, requiring mass unconditional forgiveness and love. The world is tired, I know I am, of Israel, and Israel has a right to defend itself. Well, duh. Every country has a right to defend itself, but it's no excuse for you to be lawless. No excuse or reason for you to commit atrocities and genocide. The world is tired, and as I say, I surely am, because I know their shtick. I know every bit of their shtick. Doesn't take a super genius to figure it out, because they've been doing the same thing over and over again for almost 100 years. So the world is tired of Israel. I'm not talking about those compromised politicians. Politicians are usually the last to get the memo and to institute changes in their society. That's why it's so important, if you live in a democratic society, to vote. The world is tired of Israel and its behavior, its lawlessness and its excuses. It's above the law, all laws, does what it does. All their excuses ring hollow. And once again, the politicians are the last to get the memo, but they will soon meet the message because they refuse to listen to their voting population. So that memo will meet them when they're voted out if they don't change direction. Time will not wait on them. The road is paved with many unintended consequences, and things seem impossible and dire until they're not. You always have to have hope and faith. We are winning until we are not. We want victory, but at times the victory we achieve is a Pyrrhic one. And what is a Pyrrhic victory? A Pyrrhic victory is one in which, yes, we win the battle perhaps, but at what cost? We might win the war at what cost? At the cost of having lost all our good, all our men or women and or women, lost all our money, lost all our children. We won, yes, but we've lost everything else. It's not worth it. Through the eyes of the soul, we believe in our arrogance that we control all the cards and fail to realize that we control no cards. In this providential war on Gaza and in this coupling it over greater transition, there will be many surprises. In our hubris, the arrogance of the fallen angels that we are. It's not Lucifer who's a fallen angel. It's us. Lucifer is okay. We forget that we are but pieces, none more valuable than another in the great chess game of the universe. This will be for another day. Mass unconditional forgiveness and love will help to ensure that the miscreants, like the entity that is Benjamin Netanyahu and his ilk, will have less imprints into which they insert themselves to repeat the crimes of history through the temporal lens, further incurring karmic debt. It will also help them to realize, well, I have nowhere else to go. I might as well start that journey up that ladder by expiating, advancing, and restoring my soul. No doubt, new imprints will be created, like the imprint Nazi. That was a new imprint, right? It was created back in the 20s. No doubt, new ones will be created, but there might be more peace until the cycle begins again. The entity still, that is the entity that is Netanyahu, still has not learned from history as he wields his strategy of divide and conquer by arming groups that call themselves ISIS-type groups or other fighters in Gaza. They will become Israel's worst nightmare. Madmen, just like the settlers, will become Israel's worst nightmare as well. Madmen doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Hezbollah was an unintended consequence of Israel's invasion of Lebanon. Hezbollah was not created by Iran. Iran, yes, supports Hezbollah, just like America supports Israel. Why does America have a right to support Israel, but Iran does not have a right to support Hezbollah? Think about that. By the spin terrorists, Israel is a terrorist state. They terrorize people, including babies and children. One's man terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And none of them, even if you're a freedom fighter, you should not harm innocent civilians, children, and babies. That goes for everybody. Hezbollah arose to drive invaders, Zionist invaders, from their homeland. ISIS was an unintended consequence of America's invasion of Iraq. You must learn to integrate. When you say you're going to empire build, you must know what you're doing. You have to know how you do regime change. But of course they never know. They're filled with all these smart people and people who are experts in geopolitics, or rather geopolitics, but sometimes we wonder at the things they do, no matter the PhDs that adorn their names. You just have to study history. It's a good teacher. If we learn the good lessons from history, we will avoid unintended consequences. The entity with the complicity of too many souls in Israel, that is the entity Benjamin Netanyahu, is leaving many unintended consequences yet to come, including that one state vision that I saw but it would not be the one that Israel has in mind. That might very well be one of the unintended consequences. For not only Israel, unintended consequences that he has created, he and his IDF, but not only for Israel, but and Zionist Jews to face in the future, but for all Jews, even if they do not agree with the actions that Israel and Netanyahu takes, even if they do not agree with the genocide, and most do not, apartheid and occupation. The harvest might and will be short, if there will be indeed a harvest. But the entity and his ilk are salting the earth for generations to come. The Jamaican proverb is, cow dead, but him left him back in kin fi beat you. The cow is dead, but it has left its skin to beat you. The leather, which is the skin of the cow, remains to make a whip or a belt to inflict pain, which will be used long after that cow is dead. As previously mentioned, through the temporal lens, the entity that is Netanyahu reads much history. However, he has not learned the good lessons that history teaches. Through the eyes of the soul, or rather history teaches us, through the eyes of the soul, he's not interested. Many miscreants are students of history, but they only use it for aggrandization and lessons on how to repeat the crimes of that history and perhaps get away with it as others in the past had not and could not. They never learn that they cannot get away with those crimes if we are not held accountable by trials as those in Nuremberg or at The Hague, execution as in the case of Mussolini, vigilante justice of sorts. Laventi Beria, he was Stalin's second-hand man, and he was a well-known rapist, serial rapist, because he could do it and get away with it. And of course, Ceausescu in Romania, we know what happened there. What a horrible sight. Or, if we do not die in what I call a rocky back paranoia, something that your paranoia, your own actions actually doesn't help you. It actually harms you, eventually harms you. That eventually takes over tyrants like Stalin, who could find no doctor to help him in the last days because none wanted to be sent to the gulag because he was paranoid. He'd probably come up with something that they were trying to kill him, and so then doctors, and especially Jewish doctors, would be become a group now, a target group for pogrom. So they stayed away from him. We keep repeating our crimes. And if the imposter justice of man, or vigilante justice, for example, doesn't help us, doesn't hold us accountable, I should say, we will inevitably be held accountable by universal justice. And even when the imposter justice of man holds us accountable, and we might get sentenced or hanged or beheaded or whatever, we still have to face universal justice for our spiritual mistakes. Still don't get away. Still have to face it. We still have to face karma, the law of cause and effects. And remember, even though it might look that way sometimes, karma is not about revenge. It's just for us to learn, correct our spiritual mistakes, and bring our souls, bring equilibrium back to our souls. Now remember, there are no exceptions to the rules or the laws of the universe. No one is above those laws. Israel has been destroying countries in the Middle East and have never been held liable for the damages it has wrought. They always leave it up nowadays to the Gulf states to pay for those damages. This is also bad-mindedness, as I discussed in my last videos. Bad-mindedness in Jamaica is that pernicious envy, where you feel that somebody has something and they shouldn't have it, you should, and if you can't have it, they shouldn't have it, and if you have it, they still shouldn't have it, and so you try your darndest to make sure they lose it. That's how Netanyahu feels to those Gulf states. So it's up to them to know that. Now, this is also, as I said, bad-mindedness on the part of the Israelis, but that is another conversation that is outside of our purview. Suffice it to say that when we indulge delinquency and incorrect actions, the actions will continue and it will eventually harm us. When we indulge and enable delinquency and incorrect actions, we commit spiritual mistakes. When we have the ability to help the perpetrators of those actions get a hold of themselves and stop, and we don't do anything, such as the collective West in what was going on and what is still going on, for example, in Gaza, then you commit spiritual mistakes. When we don't do our duty, we harm ourselves and others. Israel should be held accountable for reparations for the damages that it has wrought in Lebanon, Gaza, the West Bank, Syria, Iran, and elsewhere, and what it has helped to incite in Iraq with the invasion by America. That was another Israeli adventurism, but of course they didn't lose anything in that war. America, the American taxpayer, has had to foot the bill of trillions of dollars for the war in Iraq. That Israel played a very significant part in instigating. It cost Israel nothing, neither pecuniary nor human lives. Americans do not have health care, universal health care, but Israelis do. And in 2020, Israel's health system was the third most efficient in the world, while that of America was last, way last, if you can go way last than last, among the G7 countries. Life expectancy is far higher in Israel than it is in America. America's education system and infrastructure are crumbling, and many young people are saddled with student loan debts. In Jamaica, the saying is, you know, I like to add my Jamaican sayings, another man we SH*T a pass a fi worry. And the man will come back at him. All of the worries, the crosses for beer. The man who poops in the road has nothing to worry about. But it is indeed the man who comes behind him, after him, and steps in that poop and has to wear it on his shoes, or if you're bare feet, on your bare feet, and bear the stench. That's the man who has to worry and who will bear the ill doings of the other man. Americans must not blame Israelis or Israel for this ridiculous state of affairs. They must blame their politicians, both Democratic and Republican. And once again, like a Nancy, Israel has found the perfect way to build an empire in the most cost-effective way possible, without the loss of life or money. America will fund that. That's what America has become now, the warehouse. Nobody has America's interest at heart, not even a lot of Americans, and especially a lot of its politicians. There's no America first anymore. Israel is a nuclear-armed state and not a child. When we break things, we need to pay to fix them. Each of us is responsible for the consequences of our actions through both the spiritual and temporal lens. Once Israel is held accountable in pecuniary terms for the damages it causes, it will indeed act responsibly and not be so quick to resort to indiscriminate violence and brutality will be more mindful that it too is a part of humanity and have consideration for others. We cannot live amongst our brothers and think only about ourselves, invoking the paranoid mentality that the world is against us. We must forego our arrogance and not dehumanize and subjugate others, and perhaps we might have to worry less and not have to look over our shoulders. The supremacy of Israel knows no bounds. They are the supreme supremacists that we have right now, at this time, on earth. Indeed, the Epstein class, that's what Epstein was, a supreme supremacist who believed that every human being was beneath him. Now, we cannot live. We must, as I said, the supremacism of Israel knows no bounds. It rivals that of Sparta, but Sparta was independent. Sparta didn't have any America to depend on for its weapons and money and lives to be lost or sacrificed. The same is not true for Israel. Once again, it is time Israel started paying for the damages and destruction that it wreaks with impunity and has left the Gulf states and America so they can pick up the tab. Once it starts paying for those damages and havoc that it wreaks, it will think twice about its empire building aspirations and learn to truly seek peace with its neighbors and treat them as equal, not as subordinates, subjects, and subhumans. And for Israel's neighbors, yes, Israel exists now. We can't roll back the clock to 1947. So we must accept its existence. We cannot go back, as I said. If we respect each other and forego arrogance, perhaps we will have a little less hate that keeps accumulating on all sides, and that's why we are in this cup runneth over period of those few greater periods of transition. So much accumulated karmic debt. It's going to take mass forgiveness and love to get past it so we can kind of begin again. If we have that forgiveness and love, we will have fewer miscreant souls excited to insert into imprints to continue their mischief, and perhaps they'll think and get tired because there's no escape. They'll get tired and decide to make that arduous journey up that ladder of soul restoration. Once again, it will be incumbent on those of us who are in this current lifetime to facilitate and ensure this forgiveness and love. As truly difficult as it will be, and believe me, the atrocities that Israel has committed and keeps committing, it is so much that through the temporal lens it would take. There are not enough generations, future generations, to avenge. Through the spiritual lens, but we know better. There would never be enough karmic journeys for us to expiate, but we know that's not so. But just a metaphor, just to express how it is, how terrible it has been. If we live in a society wherein a group of people are subjugated and oppressed, we must know that one day we too, our section of the population, will become subjugated. Subjugation, injustice, and oppression are a very slippery slope. If we slip, we slide. It might take a while, but once the slip starts sliding, it begins to accelerate at a very fast pace. That is what is now happening in Israel, as the entity that is Netanyahu senses that his time is running out, and indeed it is. This is for entertainment purposes only. He will indeed be the cow that leaves his skin to beat the nation, as did Gombos when he laid the perfect foundation for Nazi rule. Benjamin Netanyahu has done a better job at destroying the masked Jew and Israel, better than any anti-Semite or hater of Israel or other enemies might have done. This is an unintended consequence through the temporal lens, but through the spiritual lens, it is an intended consequence. Jews destroyed the name Nazi and the fascists during World War II. So now the imprint, that imprint, Nazi, okay, it has been destroyed. There's even the symbol, which is an ancient symbol used by many peoples throughout the world for eons, thousands of years. We don't want to even use that symbol, that swastika anymore, which is a form of a cross, one type of a cross. That's how bad it is. That's how the stench that they left, that indelible stain, that wound so deep and so wide that no cauterization, we would say, can heal it in the temporal lens. And so that name, that imprint Nazi, has totally been destroyed. So now, with the atrocities, the Nazi, the Third Reich on steroid that Israel is, has indeed tarnished in the same vein the imprint Jew. Jews were blamed for the economic issues after World War I. And now these reincarnated, and that was not true. Always blame the Jew, right? That's always been for thousands of years. Always, because they have been a minority in many societies. So you always blame the minority, and especially the Jew. Just like blacks and the Roma. Now, entities who have, or I like to say, who are masquerading in the imprint, Zionist Jewish billionaires who are helping to destroy America because they have an Israeli first agenda. So they don't care about the democracy of America. Some are Americans and some are Israeli. But they have one agenda, the greater Israel, and of course there's the money, the West Bank, the genocide, they support that, and they want the annexation of the West Bank. They want to ethnically cleanse and Gaza by any and every means. And so they are now at the forefront. So they have now helped to destroy American democracy, and in perpetrating, and they've bought out, a lot of them, the media landscape, and they're doing what they were purported to have done, which was not true in World War II. They have now done exactly what was not so in World War I. And it's not just only Jewish, Zionist Jewish billionaires. It's all billionaires. Zionists, Christians, and non-Zionist billionaires, because it's all about the money, the great mammon, whether they want to build AI centers in Gaza, whether it's real estate development or to mine or drill for the oil off the coast there in the Mediterranean. So now they have also helped to cement that imprint as well, make it true. And this, through the eyes of the soul, is intentional. Destroy the imprint, Jew, and what they've always, that imprint has been known as and represented, the representation of an underdog imprint suffering thousands of years of persecution, suffering just like blacks, and about 500 years for the Roma or Romani in Europe. And now this part, please say exactly what I say and do not freely interpret it or use it out of context to weaponize anti-Semitism, or on the other end to use it as an excuse for anti-Semitism. Say exactly what I say. Now, that entity that was, and we're almost done, Netanyahu, was no friend of imprint Jew, but rather only inserted itself once again in that imprint because that was the perfect opportunity to gain the power that it had sought in Hungary. The rule over a big country, a greater Hungary, totalitarian dictatorship, king and emperor indeed. In this instance, the opportunity was presented in an underdog imprint that he had hated, but that did not matter. Masks are really irrelevant. It is then of little wonder that he should have reincarnated so quickly than is normal for souls who believe that they can outsmart karma by delaying the normal soul cycles until they see an opportune moment to continue with their ignoble agenda and their lust for power, causing chaos and misery. As previously mentioned, this is one of the few cup runneth over greater periods of transition in not only our sojourn in this earthly realm, but also with the environment. This was a most propitious time when all these souls see their greatest chance to achieve their aim, be they divergent ones. But at the soul level, the aim is still the same: control and power over what they see as their true kingdom, the earth, and its material affinities. Even though many religious systems speak about the afterlife with little or no understanding of the spiritual world, I'm a shaman. I often travel back and forth, and we all have the ability to do so, but in each journey we have certain things that we have to get done, certain expiations that we have to do. And so some of us, and me for example, in this journey, yes, I do travel back and forth as a shaman. I have to. So, as I said, even though many religious systems speak about the afterlife with little or no understanding of the spiritual world, the adherents do not realize that in their lack of understanding and consequent actions, or subsequent actions rather, and need to dominate others, the heaven and hell of which they speak is right here on earth that they have created. What they imagine in their fighting for God or on his behalf is non-existent, truly a figment of their hubris, our hubris. For we are powerless to fight for the omnipotent being who we claim God is. That's something that is greater than us. Who are we? These are the same souls that believe they can accelerate the second coming of Christ by supporting the atrocities and genocide of the Palestinian people, uniting a greater Israel so that when all Jews are gathered therein, that it can be destroyed, as some will be converted to Christianity, that is, and those who choose not to convert will be burnt, thus heralding the second coming. If we so believe in the omnipotence of this being, we should realize that divine timing is the master. It is the master because it waits on no one, none of us, but we must wait on it. And it is often dictated by divine order, but sometimes when certain things have to be done, providential. And, I go into that a bit in my book that is coming out, the reincarnation of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and a case study in reclaiming past lives. I go into that a bit and explain what those are. Sometimes divine timing will occur, step in, so to speak. Furthermore, the Christ that advocated, that man from Galilee, I like to say that hippie, that man who spoke about love, turned the other cheek, that man who possessed nothing but the clothes on his back and the sandals on his feet, who talked about the children and said, suffer the children and forbid them not to come unto me, and that the least that you do unto them, you do unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. That man who spoke about refugees and said he was hungry and someone fed him. He was thirsty, someone gave him to drink. Someone gave him shelter. Remember now, Christ was homeless. This is the man that these Zionist Christians say, believe would welcome genocide and cruelty to especially children and babies, so that he can come, so that they in their selfish, lack of understanding way can have their rapture and their second coming. I can guarantee them, Christ, there will be no second coming of Christ. They do not understand what they read. They do not understand. They have no understanding of anything. What travesty. Once again, such minds do not open to that which is logical. One day they will understand. One day, but each man must evolve according to its own light. And I do get passionate. And with that passion, I have no hate. I might be angry because people refuse to learn, but what can we do? Each man, we have knowledge. And each man evolves according to his own light. One day the understanding will come, but I pray that we do no harm. And so I'll end this. Now, as usual, hate hitching a ride, hate a contagion, a cancer metastasizing, an opportunistic bacteria, the cloud waiting to block the sun, hate waiting to hitch a ride on the train of love, hate the rat on its rat passage, hitching a ride on the boat to the plague, hate the bedbug waiting for our suitcase, hate the roach riding on our coattails, hate the shadow always lurking, sometimes longer than us, hate just lurking behind the thin curtain, waiting for its turn on center stage to take us to a place not so far away, a blast back from civilization to barbarism, from knowledge back to ignorance, from wisdom back to impudence. Hate never takes a holiday, always looking for the opportunity to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate inhabits the same house as love within us. None of us is without blemish. All of us live in glass houses. God the Creator, that's something that is greater than us, has no chosen few. He loves all of us in equal portions. He's not selective or vindictive. That's why he's given us that vehicle that is reincarnation, and the facilitator of reincarnation, death. That vehicle to help us expiate and correct our spiritual mistakes so that we can bring equilibrium to our souls and journey back to the Father and to our original path. That something that is greater than us bequeathed to none any lands. That something that is greater than us is not vindictive, selective, or supremacist in ideology and practices. That something that is greater than us bequeathed unto none of us lands. That something that is greater than us would not be short-sighted, cynical, and cruel, because seas and oceans rise, drown, and cover lands. Volcanoes erupt and cover lands with lava and ashes, and earthquakes erupt, they swallow us and our belongings. No, do not believe anyone who feeds you that Kool-Aid that God gave any group any parcel of land, or that group is chosen. We cannot fight for or on the behalf of that something that is greater than us. Because that something that is greater than us is omnipotent and doesn't need us. We need to fight for ourselves, for the equilibrium, restoring equilibrium to our souls, to fight for, not against, but for our brothers in this brotherhood of man, so that we can all journey upward together up that ladder of soul restoration. To believe that we can fight for on the behalf of that something that is greater than us is arrogant, hubris. That is why we are all fallen angels. We are all tenants on this earth, not here to have dominion or to rule over anything or anyone. We are not here to have dominion over the fowl of the air, the fish in the sea, or the beasts in the fields. We are not here to rule and have supremacy over our brothers. So let us be good tenants. Let us take care of ourselves and each other. Let us trod ever so lightly and take care of this planet we call Earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. Remember that something that is greater than us. That is the fatherhood of God. We respect and show our love for that something that is greater than us by taking care of ourselves, of each other, and of the planet, our temporary home, and the creatures thereon that dwell thereon. May we never try to flee our conscience so that we will always do correct actions. May we learn to walk a mile in our brother's shoes so that we can see the humanity in each other. May we respect the differences in each other and know that our Creator has no chosen few. And may we find comfort in the knowledge that each of us is slated for redemption. None is excluded. May we find solace in the knowledge that it is not a question of if, but one of when. Each of us shall return to our Father, not some of us, Father, but our Father, all of us, our Father. And doesn't matter, I use father, mother, doesn't matter the terminology. May we know that we are just tenants on this earth and take care of each other, the earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. May we always adhere to the divine principles of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, love. May we know that which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am what? My brother's keeper. May the tiny shrouds, all those little babies and children who are sacrificed in our forever wars, those are the tiny shrouds of light. May those tiny shrouds of light forever illuminate our path through the dark. May peace forever reside within us and between us. And I thank you for watching my video, One Divine, Universal Love.